the figures are, as you say, absolutely staggering. I think the British Ministry of Defence intelligence folks put out a brief just in the last 48 hours that shows average casualties per month in 2022, 2023, which was higher, and then 2024, which was almost double per month. It's hard to imagine any country that can sustain average casualties around 1,500 to 2,000 every single day, day in, day out. Now, Russia's a big country, but even it is having problems with getting more volunteers. You've seen pay rates go up. You've seen recruitment bonuses continue to skyrocket in Russia. You see this year being the year of the veteran. I think even Putin will have problems sustaining that for the long term because he really does not want to go into another mobilisation push. Even for a dictator, that will be problematic.
Russia's highest priorities on the battlefield right now, is it fair to say they are Pokrovsk and Kursk? Can it do both? Can it kick Ukraine out of Russia and take Pokrovsk?
Well, it certainly appears to be able to take Pokrovsk. It's going to take them longer than they wanted to, but it looks like they will probably be able to do that eventually. Touretsk looks like it's close to falling. It's not quite there yet. Kursk's a little bit different because the Ukrainians really want to keep it as part of a negotiation. It's not a big bit of Russia, but it's always better to negotiate holding some of your enemy's territory than none of your enemy's territory. So I think Kursk is going to be a more difficult proposition for the Russians because the Ukrainians are defending there with very elite troops. And even Putin, I think, recognised this when in December he decided that he wasn't going to give a timeline for it. In fact, he said there isn't a timeline for this, whereas several months previously he directed he want it cleared by October.
And in that light, given this small operation into Kursk, another counter-offensive, as it were, I mean, do you think, if that really is it, and it was a small demonstration of what the Ukrainians can do, was it worth it, do you think, in this political context, in this political landscape at the moment?
I think so. I mean, they don't appear to have expended a huge amount of resources. They don't appear to have had to commit additional brigades to it. It got attention back on Ukraine, which is important for the Ukrainian leader and Ukrainian people. And it would have given the soldiers a boost in morale, the Ukrainians a boost in morale, and just given the Russians another kick to say, hey, you're not running everything here. We still have agency. We still have the opportunity and capacity to hurt you. And that's an important message to send to the incoming American administration as well.
And at this stage in the war, some of the key challenges facing Ukraine's armed forces, you could summarise as troop shortages, exhaustion, too few experienced frontline officers, and relations between the battlefield and higher command. How should a modern military address these kind of problems? And are there other problems I haven't actually mentioned?
No, I think that's them by and large. The manpower problem really is the most compelling challenge that the Ukrainians have at the moment. Mobilisation started off well, but it's kind of petered out now. But within the mobilisation process, it's clear that the allocation of new troops between new brigades and existing brigades has some problems. The Ukrainians really seem to be keen to form new brigades when those troops might be better employed going to existing experienced brigades to train them up, but also reinforce existing front lines. I think command and control is a really interesting question. The Ukrainians have these regional commands above the brigades, which can have, a dozen or two brigades, and that's very difficult to wield as a senior commander. And while some have proposed divisions and corps like NATO armies, that may not be the solution anymore in 21st century land warfare, given the challenges of drones and greater visibility of the battlefield. Maybe we do need to really go back to the drawing board when it comes to military land force organisations for 21st century conflict.
And what do you think NATO can learn from what's happening in Ukraine from that?
Well, I think there's a huge amount of lessons, obviously the technical ones when it comes to the use of drones, countering drones, air defence, electronic warfare. We've seen 3 instances of drones launching other drones in the last month, including the Battle of Lipsy, which was all drones. So they're important technical lessons. There's also important tactical lessons that have doctrinal insights about how military operate, how militaries train their people, how they undertake tactical operations. And then finally, there's a whole lot of people lessons about training and the development of leaders for the kinds of very demanding yet austere circumstances that battlefield leaders will find themselves in 21st century warfare.
And I suppose when the political decisions are made also to supply, it's the expediency in which weapons and equipment can be brought to the front line.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's one thing to promise weapons, but if you're waiting 6 months, I mean, that is an eternity for the Ukrainians. I mean, they have a learning and adaptation cycle, which, is measured in hours, days, and weeks when you have to wait months. The situation can have changed 5 different times over that period. So we need to get better at delivering equipment more rapidly. We need to enhance the amount of equipment. But I think the most important thing in 2025 I'd like to see from the West is an actual strategy for what they would like to see out of this war. We have not seen a senior American leader say whether they actually want Ukraine to win or not. And neither of the candidates for the US presidential election would even say they wanted Ukraine to win. I think that's troubling.
I suppose post the 20th of January, we should get a clear idea of that.
Yeah, one would hope so. I think we will. Whether we'll like that answer or not, I'm not sure. I'm keeping an open mind. Certainly, just as it is in the UK, here in Australia, the attitude is it's not in anyone's interest for the leader of the free world to fail. And we're all hoping that the incoming President Trump makes good decisions about Ukraine as well as confronting China and other strategic problems.
Yeah, I'll ask you a little bit more about that in a moment. There were staggering Russian losses in 2024. Do you think President Putin can maintain those losses at this rate in 2025, given the manpower, the workforce problems he has back home?
Yeah, I mean the figures are, as you say, absolutely staggering. I think the British Ministry of Defence intelligence folks put out a brief just in the last 48 hours that shows average casualties per month in 2022, 2023, which was higher, and then 2024, which was almost double per month. It's hard to imagine any country that can sustain average casualties around 1,500 to 2,000 every single day, day in, day out. Now, Russia's a big country, but even it is having problems with getting more volunteers. You've seen pay rates go up. You've seen recruitment bonuses continue to skyrocket in Russia. You see this year being the year of the veteran. I think even Putin will have problems sustaining that for the long term because he really does not want to go into another mobilisation push. Even for a dictator, that will be problematic.
You have in your deep dive analysis, a new sort of vocal analysis of the situation in your Substack. You've outlined what you see as Russia's military and political objectives for 2025. What are they?
Yeah, there's a few different ones. In the military side of things, clearly getting the Ukrainians out of Kursk and seizing Pokrovsk and as much of the Donbass as possible is an important military objective. But they also want to be able to attrit and to wear down the Ukrainian military as well as Ukrainian society writ large over the course of the year. Politically, for Putin, he clearly wants to be able to sustain his alliances, even though they're not formal alliances, but his arrangements with China, North Korea, and Iran to provide the enabling support they do for this war, not just materially, but diplomatically, economically, and propagating misinformation. He wants to continue his hybrid warfare against European countries to ensure that they moderate their support for Ukraine. We've seen sabotage, we've seen anchor dragging across internet cables and these kind of things. That will continue, if not be enhanced. And I think a final important political objective for Putin, besides keeping as much of this war away from his people as possible, is to influence the incoming Trump administration. And I think part of his accelerated tempo of operations in the last few months has been entirely about putting a perception in the incoming Trump administration minds that Russian victory is inevitable and coercing Ukraine into some kind of accommodation is an urgent priority for the Trump administration.
Yeah, and on that note of influencing the incoming Trump administration, how much was President Zelensky's recent interview, that 3 hour interview with the Moscow born US podcaster Lex Friedman earlier this week? How much was that about sending a message to Trump? And what do you think he wanted to achieve with that interview?
Yeah, it's certainly about sending a message to Trump and elements of the conservative movement in the United States. Lex Friedman has certainly got a lot of listeners, unfortunately, in the United States and other countries. So I think it was wise of Zelensky to uh, get that platform to be able to engage conservative listeners in the United States and other countries as well. And it was a very extensive interview. I mean, Zelensky's a pretty good performer when it comes to these kind of things. He was certainly on message. And I think the key message was help us to defeat Russia. We're not asking for boots on the ground. We're not even asking for your resources. Just give us all of Russia's, uh, you know, um, reserves that you've been able to take from them, and we'll use that to finish the job.
And also, I suppose, a sort of stress on the fact that the US security guarantees were what he saw as the absolute priority above everything else in terms of security guarantees.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think there is a peace solution without security guarantees. And as he said, it's very much appreciated when groups of Europeans get together to provide security assurances. When individual countries like the United Kingdom and others sign these security assurances. But at the end of the day, the most important and the really non discretionary security guarantor for Ukraine in the future is the United States. I think he's right there. A ceasefire without some kind of mechanism to ensure that any peace continues through the security guarantees of the US and NATO will be, I think, a very short peace.
You've been watching Frontline for Times Radio with me, Kate Chabot. If you'd like to be the first to get exclusive content, you can sign up for membership with the link below. You can also listen to Times Radio for the latest news or read it on thetimes.com. My thanks to our producer today, Louis Sykes, and to you for watching. Bye for now.